obviously, but primarily it's happening down in Gaza. So you know where Gaza is?
Yeah, down by.
Way down here. So you got Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Gaza. And why is Gaza such an important thing for Hamas control?
Access to the water. Access to the
Water,
water.
extremely important. From where do they get stuff coming into Gaza? Oh, it's down here. Egypt, who has an open agreement with Saudi Arabia. So a lot of stuff can be shipped up, shipped in, or even brought up to try to come in. The Israeli Navy is right here. You know why they're right there? To protect the seas and everything that comes in. Back in biblical times, Bethlehem, as we talked about, is not a short journey that you come up from Galilee coming down into Bethlehem. It was a long trip. What else did you learn about Bethlehem? Or what did you learn about Bethlehem?
Pastor, just an observation. Dottie and I went in 1981. No walls, clear access throughout the country, none of what is currently, so it's only deteriorated as.
Oh, yeah.
it's going on.
Yeah, and mine was almost 20, not quite 20 years ago, so yeah.
Are there walls also in Gaza? Or just on the
There are walls in Gaza, but in Gaza what happens, Rabbi from Dundareen put me into a group with a lady who, in Facebook, that allowed me access to be with them, to pray with them. And she lives in Gaza. And what's happening in Gaza, which we don't hear anything about all the time, is from here, because of the winds, they'll release balloons that have munitions on them that when they hit the ground, they'll explode. And they let them go at the border, they just kind of come over here and blow up. She sent me a map to where they're tracking the ones they know of, or where they blew up, and there are like 150 locations within a couple days. So what's happening in Gaza too is all of a sudden they'll start firing rockets. I don't mean long-range rockets, they don't have the capabilities, but rockets to go over. And so if you live anywhere in that part of Jerusalem, there's get rockets fired at you. And it's not all the time, and it definitely follows around some of their holy celebrations, Ramadan and things like that. So it's a very different world. But for Bethlehem, it is in the West Bank, Palestinian control. It's about 6 miles, to give you a distance of reference, 6 miles south of Jerusalem. So Bethlehem is not very far away. In biblical times, do you know what Bethlehem was used for? Did you do any research on that? How many of you got? Okay, show of hands. No guilt. How many of you looked up Bethlehem this past week? How many of you did not? All right. So let's do a little excursion here with Bethlehem. Bethlehem was a farming area, huge in farming in biblical times. They raised a lot of grains, a lot of grain fields, and sheep and goats were all throughout the hillside. And it's amazing that little has changed over 3,000 years. It's relatively the same as far as the nature of the area. It's on the edge of the Judean desert, and it lies just to the southeast of the Judean desert. It's in the West Bank, but it is very safe. Thousands of Christians visit that site every single month with no issues. It's primarily, right now, its greatest resource is tourism, which makes sense. Historically, what was Bethlehem?
Birthplace of David.
Okay, even back, yes, birthplace of David, even back further. You remember in the Old Testament where God said, okay, I'm going to deliver you, and you're going to have a land flowing with milk and honey, and when you go through, you're going to wipe out the Amalekites, the Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Canaanites. Bethlehem was a Canaanite village, and it remained that right before the conquest of Israel around 1400 BC. And it means, what does Bethlehem mean? I kind of like this. I didn't know this until I looked it up. House of bread. You know why it's probably called the house of bread? They had so many different grains and wheats and barley that were being raised there. It makes sense that it was a house of bread. The places of interest that you might find in Bethlehem, Rachel's tomb is in Bethlehem. The Church of the Nativity is in Bethlehem. You know what that is?
That's where Jesus was born.
Yeah, built over church. built over the place where they thought Jesus was born. Who said so? Constantine's mother was the one who went on this great crusade, and she did a lot of research, had a lot of power in checking all the authorities at the time. Historically, this is what they believed, or where they believed this to take place. So what does that mean for us? How old is the United States of America?
250 years.
250 years old. When did Constantine's mom go out and do all this stuff?
350 BC.
Yeah, or between 325 and 375. And when Constantine was alive, what was so important about Constantine?
Holy Roman Empire.
Yeah, first Christian emperor. He actually initiated and instituted the Edict of Milan, which said if you are a Roman citizen, then you can have Christian citizenship as well, which meant something new. Christian had never been recognized by any entity, let alone the emperor, at any time. So he was huge in that. His conversion, they say, it's argued, was on his deathbed to Christianity, although he knew the writing was on the wall. His mom went out and built this site, also built many other sites, the Church of Holy Sepulchre that we've talked about, where Christ would have died, Calvary, and 20 others. So the church that's there is called the Church of the Nativity. This is a picture looking at the church from the outside. Not a whole lot to it, right? And this is the church on the inside. Now you'll note when you come in, the entrance back here at the back, and this is what you were looking at going down the side. What's the shape of the church? It's pretty cool. It's a cross. You got transepts that are on each side. It's kind of hard to tell, but it forms a cross. Like if you were to look, if you go to like the Google Earth and you look at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis, and you look at the chapel of St. Timothy and Titus, it's a cross. Two transepts on the side in the center. A lot of the churches of that day were built like that. Why? Because it was a symbol of the cross of Christ. And you'll notice that there are, and I'll show you a picture of these columns that still reside. There was a huge church fire. The roof was mostly wood and it burned down. It's been rebuilt over the centuries. And then you actually go through into the area that I'll show you is underneath here on the backside. You go through the door and it's right over in here. And I'll show you this. It's a picture on, this is the altar area that was right dead center that they built over what they call the Star of Bethlehem. You see that, it's like bronze. It's a hole, which is where people will walk in and say, this is what's recognized as the spot. Kind of neat. What else was in Bethlehem? Well, we talked about it last week. Herod did something. He built this gigantic thing called the Herodian. Nice answer. And the Herodian was built really close to Bethlehem near the Judean desert wilderness. And you can see all the way north. Because remember, Bethlehem is how far from Jerusalem? 6 miles. So he could see, all around. Nothing was higher than that. We have the grain fields. We have the hillsides where the livestock would have lived. We also have the shepherd's field. What is the shepherd's field? How many states where the shepherds were in the field? Yeah.
Where the shepherds came from.
Yeah, that's what they say. And again, for that one, like, what, how do they know what field they're in that night? But it's just when we go there, if you were on the trip, I think we'll stop there. And one thing you'll notice is where, what kind of environment, if you had to describe it, what did it look like? What do you think in your mind? If you were to describe the shepherd's field, what would you describe?
Meadow.
Say again?
A meadow.
Okay, a meadow. Hilly. Desolate.
A single tree.
A single tree. A city in the distance.
Cave somewhere.
Caves, yeah, when you go to the shepherd's field, you walk into a cave that about 20 people can get around and sit down in, which might have been a cave that they would have gone in. When did the shepherds appear to the babe in Bethlehem? Was it wintertime? How many say it's wintertime? Shepherds usually won't be out in the field in wintertime. Why is Christmas celebrated on December 25th? Yeah, it was a pagan festival. The early church wanted to say, we need to have a festival that we celebrate. Why is it on December 25th? Is that always on a Sunday? No, because Christmas follows the solar calendar. Okay? So Christmas, December 25th, is always on December 25th. Easter follows the lunar calendar. Why? So it'll always be on a Sunday. It's always the first Sunday after the first full moon, after the vernal equinox. They said Easter has to be the celebration of that Sunday worship. You know, actually today was a little Easter. Every Sunday is a little Easter. Make sense? Shepherds in the field, December 25th. Was it Christmas time? Sorry, bust your bubble. Probably not. But there's caves they would have been in. And I don't mean cave, you're like, oh, I don't want to go back in there. It'd be a hollowed out carved area, maybe about, so big. You can come down, get out of the elements, be safe, and also still have an area where you can watch. Today, it's kind of a park set up. I don't know if there was grass or trees, but it's a beautiful sight, and we'll be able to see that. And then there's also what really interests me, and I'm going to be intently looking for it a little more geographically when I go this time. There's a huge, deep ravine that runs right outside of Bethlehem. And some have said that might be the inspiration of David writing his song, the 23rd Psalm. That valley in the area where he would have been raised. Pretty cool. What else do we know about Bethlehem? We said it was Rachel's tomb. Let's turn to Genesis chapter 35, verse 16 through 20. Okay, so we read a little bit about Rachel. Genesis chapter 35, 16 through 20.
16 through what?
20. Yeah.
Want somebody to read it?
Yes, please. Thanks, Brian.
Then they journeyed from Bethel. When they were still some distance from Ephraim, Rachel went into labor, and she had hard labor. And when her labor was at its hardest, the midwife said to her, "Do not fear, for you have another son." And as her soul was departing, for she was dying, she called his name Ben-Oni, but his father called him Benjamin. So Rachel died. She was buried on the way to Ephraim, that is Bethlehem. And Jacob set up a pillar over her tomb. It is the pillar of Rachel's tomb, which is there to this day. Israel journeyed on and pitched his tent beyond the Tower of Edom.
So Ephraim and Benjamin, right? That in this particular account, which is in the order of sons, the last of the 12 tribes, Benjamin. Okay? So Rachel was there. Let's see another instance. Let's go to Ruth, chapter 1. It's not a big book, 4 chapters. Chapter 1, verses 1 and 2.
In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech,
Good job.
and the name of his wife Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Shimeon. They were Ephratites from Bethlehem in Judah. They went into the country of Moab and remained there.
So these Ephratites are going to the Moabites, and it's just this move of the people in Naomi, and also we'll hear more about it in Ruth. But the husband was from Bethlehem. Let's read one more about Naomi. Let's go to verse 22. Let's just start 19 and read through 22. Now remember, what Bethlehem was known for what again?
Grains.
Grain, wheat, raising those kinds of crops. Somebody read 19 through 22, Ruth 1.
So the two of them went on until they came to Bethlehem. And then they came to Bethlehem. The whole town was stirred because of them. And the
Why
woman-
were they stirred? What's that?
They were back.
Yeah, and who's with them?
It's just her and her daughter.
Moabite.
Daughter-in-law.
Which
Left with
is?
a husband and two sons and came back with
Naomi
us.
and.
Yeah, and she's a Moabite. She's a Moabite. All right, keep going.
Oh, and stirred of them. And the woman said, "Is this Naomi?" She said to them, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord had brought me back empty."
What does that mean?
She had sons.
Husband died.
Yeah, her husband and sons.
Sons.
She comes back with no family that she went with. Keep going.
Why they call me Naomi when the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has brought calamity unto me. So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, was with her, who returned from the country of Moab. And they came to Bethlehem at the very beginning of the barley harvest.
So what is one thing they raised there?
Barley.
I think they used beer back then. I don't know. All right, let's keep, so they're going back to work, right? We don't know about her position or income, but you know, if you do not have a husband or your husband is deceased, then if he had brothers, they're supposed to marry you and take you into that family. But where is she? She's by herself with her daughter-in-law, right? And they're going back, and maybe they're going back because they have to work. They need to get into the fields. Let's jump ahead to Ruth chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. Somebody read that, please.
Now Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him, in whose sight I shall find favor." And she said to her, "Go, my daughter." So she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers, and she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the clan of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem, and he said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." And they answered, "The Lord bless you." Then Boaz said to his young man who was in charge of the reapers, "Whose young woman is this?" And the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, "She is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab." She said, "Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers." So she came, and she has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest.
All right, stop right there. She's called the Moabite 6 times. Why do you think that is?
For acceptance back in her home country?
Yeah, she's a foreigner.
Right.
This is not a part of her belief system. And yet she'd heard the word of God through Naomi and was brought into the understanding. Isn't that neat? How that person outside is brought in and how God was showing his blessings to her. Then let's jump ahead and read Ruth 4, 13 through 17. All this is in Bethlehem. We hadn't even got to the New Testament. Something happened. I can't remember what it is. Maybe y'all tell me. Ruth 4, 13 through 17.
So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And he went into her, and the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. Then the women said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a redeemer, and may his name be renounced in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him." Then Naomi took the child and laid him on her lap and became his nurse. And the women of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, "A son has been born to Naomi." They named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, father of David.
So Ruth, get this, A Moabite outside the faith is in the genealogy and the line of Jesus Christ. That's powerful. That is powerful. Does that make sense? Everybody with me? So in genealogy of Christ, you got a prostitute, you got a Moabite. Oh, wow. Ah. I mean, you've got a sketchy background. I didn't ask if you're a prostitute. You see how God works? It's not for the elect. He elects for himself. And that's you and me. Paul said, chief of sinners though I be. Paul hadn't have met me yet when he wrote that. All right, let's jump ahead a little bit. So we know it's from Jesse, and Jesse's tree line goes on into who?
David.
David, King David. Where was he from? 1 Samuel. I'm glad you asked. Chapter 17. So we start learning about David. Saul's chosen king in Samuel. Saul defeats all these different other kingdoms at the time. And then chapter 17, he has to fight 13 the Philistines, and then defeats them, and then all these other enemies, the Amorites, the Moabites, the Zobites, the Amalekites, and all of these come against him, and then Saul starts turning against the Lord. How does he turn against the Lord? Remember, he was first king, anointed. He started seeking out divinators, fortune tellers. And he was told not to. Eventually, he went and saw this one divinator, and afterwards fell on his sword, went crazy. But then David became king. So verse 17, verse 12, we can have this great story about David and Goliath. Somebody want to read verse 12?
Now David was the son of an Ephrathite named Jesse, who was from Bethlehem in Judah. Jesse had 8 sons, and in Saul's time he was old and well advanced in years.
So David is from Bethlehem. He grew up in Bethlehem. He was a shepherd boy. It was a lowly and boring job, and nobody wanted it. However, David, at his time, he put it to good use, as he wrote many, many of the Psalms that we read and sing. He played the harp. He threw a sling, and he grew in the love and admonition of the Lord. Some of the Psalms that David wrote were written around Bethlehem, the place that he lived. Then he was anointed king. Let's read 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 1.
The Lord said to Samuel, how long will you grieve over Saul, since I have rejected him from being king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided for myself a king among his sons.
So, who was the one? David was the one. And then jump ahead to verse 4. Gary, go read.
Verse 4 says,
1 Samuel,
it's
yeah.
small, hang on. I'm gonna find it. 1 Samuel 16:4, right?
It's the upper side.
Okay. Samuel did what the Lord said, and when he arrived at Bethlehem, the elders of the town trembled when they met him. They asked, "Do you come in peace?"
So, he was commanded, and what did he do? He was faithful when he came, and then read verses, just keep on reading through 7. Please.
He said, "You come peaceably." And he said, "Peaceably, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice." And he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. When they came, he looked on Eliab and thought, surely the Lord appointed it before him.
All the way through 7? Okay.
Oh, not through 7. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart.
So, what can we describe David as?
Small and stuff.
Average
He's not
size,
big,
small.
right? Average at best, but there's a distinguishing mark that maybe he's being judged because he's not big and huge, but it's in God, right? What else do we know about David? Let's turn to verse 16, chapter 16, verse 11 through 13. Somebody will read that. First Samuel 16, verse 11 through 13.
So he asked Jesse, "Are these all the sons you have?" "They're still the youngest," Jesse answered, "but he is tending the sheep." Samuel said, "Send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives." So he sent and had him brought in. He was ruddy, with a fine appearance and handsome features. Then the Lord said, "Rise and anoint him."
Wait, anybody else have another translation? It says something different? Karen, what do you have? Verse 12.
Now he was ruddy and had beautiful eyes and was handsome.
Yeah, so, I don't know, it was blue eyes, I don't know, but beautiful eyes, striking eyes. Keep going, David.
So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came upon David in power. Samuel then went to Ramah.
So when did the spirit of power come on David? Right here, when he's anointed with oil. Who do you anoint with oil?
Kings.
The prophet. Who's a prophet anoint with oil?
Kings.
King. Whoever the king's going to be. So David was anointed in front of all his brothers. So in Bethlehem too, we talked about the Herodian that was built, and it was there on the side in Herod's time. And with that and understanding in mind, let's jump ahead and read about something that's going to take place. Let's turn to Micah chapter 5. Micah 5 verse 2. There you have it. Just before Nahum.
Yeah. Micah 2.
Micah chapter 5, verse 2. Page 1492, if you get the Lutheran Study Bible.
But you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times.
Keep going all the way through, say 5.
Therefore Israel will be abandoned until the time when she is one who is in labor bears a son, and the rest of the brothers return to join the Israelites. He will stand, and shepherd will flock in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God, and they will live securely. From then his greatness will reach to the ends of the earth. And he will be our peace when the Assyrians invade our land and march through our fortresses. We will raise again from 7 shepherds, even 8 commanders, who will rule the land of Assyria with the sword.
So we talked about Sennacherib's prison. Remember that? And I showed you that, the conifer that was found. And you can see one at Chicago Historical Institute. We'll see one when we're in Israel, in the great city of Nineveh when it was dug up. This is what we're talking about here. Sennacherib was the one who was going through the Assyrians to try to kill and destroy everything, end up attacking Jerusalem. It's recorded for us in 2 Kings. And here he's saying there's going to be one that's going to come, power's going to be known throughout all the land. And who is that? Jesus. Jesus. Let's jump ahead. Let's look at Luke chapter 2, verse 7. The prophecy of Jesus to come. And then Luke 2, verse 7.
2 verse 7. Luke 2 verse 7. Luke 2. Did you say that?
Y'all know this. You say it every Christmas. And she gave
Birth to her firstborn son.
firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger because the innkeeper said, "Get out." No, because there was no place for them in the inn. And then the angels appeared, and the shepherds were watching the flocks at night. Look at verse 8 through 16 of chapter 2. Somebody read 8 through 16. Luke 2.
And in the same region, there were shepherds out in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And an angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them. And they were filled with great fear. And the angel said to them, "Fear not, For behold, I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior who is Christ the Lord. And this will be a sign for you. You will find a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger.
All the way through 16.
And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among those with whom he is pleased. When the angels went away from them into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, Let us go over to Bethlehem and see the thing that has happened, which the Lord has made known to us. And they went with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the baby lying in a manger.
And then Matthew chapter 2, verse 1, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. And then what happened? Everybody turn to Matthew chapter 2, verse 16 to 18. Matthew 2, 16 through 18.
16 to 18.
Yes.
And then Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, became furious.
Wait, which Herod is this? Is this the Herod that built Caesarea Maritima?
Yes.
Everybody say yes. The Herod that gave Caesarea Philippi to his son? Yes. The Herod that built the Herodian? Yes. The Herod that built the temple? Great, grand new temple? Yes. The Herod that built his house on Mount Zion bigger than the temple? Yes. The maniacal, diabolical Herod that killed more than one of his own sons? Yes. The same Herod that killed one of his sons so that when he died, at least, the nation would be mourning something because they knew he wouldn't mourn for him? That's the same Herod that we're talking about. Now, maybe today there'll be a spin maybe you've never heard before. Keep reading.
Wise men became furious, and he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and all that region who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had ascertained from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by the prophet Jeremiah. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be comforted because they are no more.
Okay, so we've tied everything back into Rachel, into the city of Bethlehem. Tell me what's so significant about Herod killing all the children 2 years and younger in Bethlehem in that region? What's the significance of that to the people and to him? Why did he do it?
There'd be a successor.
Say again?
There'd be a successor to him.
Yeah, he was so paranoid and afraid of some other king coming in and taking away his power, right? But by doing that, what's the city we've just been studying this whole time? Bethlehem. What's the importance of Bethlehem? It's the descendants of those from Bethlehem, from the root of Jesse, is going to be the Christ. Him killing all the children 2 years and younger, what's he saying? I don't care about prophecy. I don't care about, I'm your king, I don't care about any of that. By killing all those kids, not only is he just trying, we always think he's just trying to secure his power, right, to be king. He didn't even care that it could be the Messiah, and he was willing to have him killed. That's the Herod that killed the children in Bethlehem.
So how naive was he that he thought he could kill the Messiah?
Yeah, he was diabolical, and was he, should he have been king? Was he a king after the Lord's heart?
No.
No. Was he a great in advancing technology? Yeah. But he didn't care at all about the Lord and the heart of the people. Okay, so here is one other area I want to look at briefly. This is the Church of All Nations. You ever seen this picture before? You know, as we go from the Temple Mount and you look out over Jerusalem, the city is right behind me. If I turn, I'm looking at the Golden Gates going up to the Temple Mount. This is the Church of All Nations. What is its significance? Anybody know? How about this picture on the inside? There's this gigantic rock right here. And if you look at the picture, how about this picture? Is that better now? Give you perspective where the Church of All Nations is? Yeah. On Mount of Olives, what's right here? Garden of Gethsemane. So what's the Church of All Nations, do you think?
Rock where Jesus prayed.
Yeah, where Jesus would have prayed. This is what was built over what would have tradition says, rock where Jesus prayed, where Luke tells us sweat like drops of blood fell to the ground as he prayed in earnest. Lord, take this cup from me, not my will, but yours be done. Church of All Nations. Outside, it's like quiet. You walk through the gardens. We don't know whether that was the exact Garden of Gethsemane, but the hillside is olive trees that are over 2,000 years old. We'll walk through and see. And going into this Church of All Nations, what's really neat, see if you can find it, is if you have this, those of you who are going to go, if you stand, it's either right here or right beside it, and you turn back and you look, I think it's this hole or this hole, and you look at the Temple Mount, it's like a cross that appears right on the dome of the rock. It's kind of cool. Stupid things I look for when I go to Israel. I need to write a book. It's a very, very, and the sound, and when we go to some of these places, we walk in and see, and on that night, the trade, you knew what he said. And any questions we have over what we've covered today? I'm not going to give you homework because you're not going to do it. Yeah. Yeah, last week of school, I'm done. I'm finished. We will meet next week and then the week after, and then we'll be off for the summer. I always like to continue teaching through the summer. I know that some parents have kids that won't have Sunday school, so that makes it a big challenge. I get that. I understand that. And there's many of us that don't have kids in the Sunday school class, and I know I want to continue, but since I'm going to be gone for a good part of that time, a lot of us are going to be gone. We'll just postpone our gathering together on Monday or Sunday mornings for Bible study until August the 13th, and we'll start back again. That way, when the kids start back, we'll start back, continue together. So, over the next 2 weeks, think of anything that you might have as cities or places from the Dead Sea to Caesarea Philippi to the Mediterranean Sea over as far as Jericho and Jordan. If there's something that we haven't touched on or covered, bring it and we'll talk about it over the next 2 weeks. Is that cool? Okay. Will somebody close this with a word of prayer today? Beverly, thank you.